Hello and welcome to SoVT Book Talk. I'm your host, Karen McVicker, and I'm thrilled today to be back on the set with Jess Hunsicker, who is the events coordinator at Northshire Bookstore in Manchester, Vermont. Hello, Jess.
Hi, Karen.
So great to see you.
Yes, so good to see you too.
I know, and this is actually our finale. This is the season finale of season 1 of SoVT Book Talk. So we're very excited to wrap things up, and we're already planning some really exciting things for our next season, and we hope you'll join us for that. And as always, these episodes are available online at GNAT and also on YouTube, and it's pretty easy. You can just Google SoVT Book Talk. There's only one of us, and a list of our episodes will come up. So we encourage you to check out our backlog also of our first season of author interviews and a lot of the books that we recommend. But today we have a very special guest. I can't wait for our chat, and I'm going to let Jess introduce her.
We have Amber Roberts joining us today. Now, she writes contemporary romance about unabashedly nerdy characters in ridiculous situations, which I love. She lives with her husband, 2 children, and formerly feral cats in the Vermont woods, right in our backyard. Eating maple creamies is a year-round activity for us and for her. She spends her time copywriting, forgetting to water her plants, and awkwardly replying, "You too," at inappropriate moments. So, Amber, welcome to the show.
You too. Thank you.
Oh yes, it's so exciting to have you here and to talk about your newest book, Haunt Your Heart Out, which I really loved. I feel like this is like the perfect book for any Vermonter who loves like a love story to really get them into the swing for the spookiest month of the year. So can you tell us a little bit about like what it's about to get us started?
I would love to. So Haunt Your Heart Out is about a bookseller in a real Vermont town, Stowe, Vermont. She works at this little bookstore and she loves it. She has no intention of leaving the state at all. And a ghost hunter who comes to town to investigate the ghost stories that he found online that take place in Stowe, Vermont. Unbeknownst to him, these ghost stories were all made up by Lex, who works at that Vermont bookstore, for her vlog a decade prior. When the ghost hunters come into town, the owner of the bookstore finds out that his store might be haunted and he doesn't want anything to do with that. So he offers to sell the bookstore to Lex for an unbeatable price. She cannot pass it up. But to get this price, she needs everybody to still think that the ghost stories are true. So she joins in on the ghost hunting for a few antics to just kind of make sure everybody still believes in those ghost stories. So there are some Vermont and Stowe area legends that make an appearance, and then there are a handful of other ghost stories that are maybe new folklore, maybe new legends. We'll see how long those stick around once this book is out.
Oh yes, I absolutely love the story between James and Lex. I think it's so sweet. It's really like complex because of this dynamic that you've thrown the 2 of them into, where she's kind of having to like keep her bases covered, and she's like much more complex as a character than maybe you would expect from this type of a book. Like so I'm curious about like where she comes from and what really inspired you to like write this book. Like why write about a bookstore? Why bookseller? And why ghost stories?
So Lex is not me, but there is a lot of me in Lex. She has anxiety. I have anxiety. So my anxiety really informed building this character. I grew up in Vermont. She grew up in Vermont. And I worked at a bookstore, and she works at a bookstore. So these are all similarities that we have. But I also there's a time in my life when I was in like late teens, early 20s, where I was trying to find myself, and I wasn't sure who I was. But I met some people at the bookstore I worked at who introduced me to some of the spookier ghost stories. We went to cemeteries and we wandered around after dark because it was the spooky thing to do. But we also got to know each other quite a bit. We went to Stowe, we went to Emily's Bridge, we went to hang out at the Green Mountain Inn to see if we could sense any ghosts there. And a lot of these experiences, we were hunting for ghosts, but as cheesy as it sounds, I was finding out who I was while I was looking for these ghosts. So all of these experiences really stuck with me, and all of these friends have moved on. They were here for college and they have since moved to different parts of the country, and we stay in touch because social media is great in that. But I was missing these experiences and these times that I had. I wrote the first draft of this in the beginning of COVID when everything was locked down, and I couldn't just take a trip out to Stowe to go experience these things all over again. So I put it all on paper, and this is what came out of that.
Yeah. I find like Lex's like propensity for her situation, like she just knows who she is, she knows where she wants to be, and I love that, like, here comes James, who's this person who she's like, this is a drifter. He's not coming, he's not sticking around. I'm not gonna get attached to this guy.
They always say that.
But she's like really firmly rooted in like what she wants. And I find that like very admirable for someone her age to be like, nope, this is where I belong. I belong in my grandfather's house. I belong in Vermont. So I found that very relatable myself. But I love to hear about your like personal connection to the characters and to the story, but can you speak more about how you like write your stories? What's your process like?
My process, I would say, is a little bit of chaos, but it's evolving. So I used to be what I call a discovery writer. So I just sit down at the keyboard or sometimes with a notebook, and I just write and see what comes out. But that then means that I have a lot of editing to do. I tend to cut multiple storylines that don't belong. I need to pull in the details that do belong. I need to fix the things that I have missed in that chaos drafting phase. So I've moved more now into I would say a loose outline. I start with a general idea of what's going to happen and what I want to happen at the end. And there's still a lot of discovery that comes with that, but it's a little more structured now than it used to be, because going through 6 or 7 revision phases was not a sustainable way for me to be writing books.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's a lot of work.
It is.
Yeah, that's interesting. I always find it so interesting to hear from authors, like if they consider themselves more of like a plotter or a pantser. Because like it's hard to tell like from the work itself, like because especially when you're dealing with a story like Haunt Your Heart Out, because there are all of these moving elements with these characters who have different motivations. Like it's like I just knew, I was like, it's going somewhere. So that's so interesting to hear. Yeah.
And I always love to ask, what are you working on now?
I am working on a fake dating destination romance with a woman who is she's a perfectionist and she's very dedicated to her job. And then the woman she's fake dating who is very not interested in any job whatsoever. She doesn't know why life can't be a party. So as you can imagine, they clash quite a bit while they're supposed to be fooling everybody into believing that they are a couple.
Oh, that sounds fascinating.
Yes.
And where's the destination?
I have not decided yet. I'm thinking somewhere tropical, somewhere warm and beachy, which would be different from usually places that are set in Vermont. So we'll see.
Would there be a research trip involved?
I hope so.
Yeah.
Oh, that's wonderful. Well, I'm so excited. I know Jess has read it. I can't wait for a chilly afternoon and a cup of tea to rip through this. It sounds awesome. I'm so excited. And we'd love to ask you to stick around and play with us. We have a little segment called Last Now Next, where we talk about the last book we read, what we're reading now, and what's on our TBR pile for next. So hopefully you can stay and share, what you've been reading.
I would love to.
Awesome. Jess, do you want to take us out?
Sure.
Okay.
So I just read this book by Carolyn Woods. It's called The Mesmerist. And I really, really like this, and I feel like you would really like it too. You probably would really like it too. And it's historical fiction.
Okay.
I think it's particularly going to be really appealing for anyone who likes true crime as well. So if you read like The Frozen River by Ariel Lawton, you'd really like this one. It takes place in Minneapolis in the 1890s, and it follows 3 different women who they're all drawn to, they're tied to this place called the Bethany Home for Unwed Mothers, which is of course where one would go if you were an unwed mother, you know, if you were having a child out of wedlock, or you know, just in any sort of scandalous circumstances one might find themselves in the 1890s. And so you follow these 3 women as like they have to kind of come together to overcome some pretty like real terror about like what it's just like to be a woman in general, but in particular in the 1890s. And their stories are so compelling, and it's all like rooted in like, you know, something real that happened, but it totally doesn't feel that way. They end up having to come together to kind of shed some light on an actual serial killer, like the country's first serial killer. And this whole story of these women who end up in this home, it's kind of like no one in the public really seems to care, because they're all working women, they're poor women, they're, you know, like not considered full citizens, like all this stuff, right? So nobody seems to really mind when they start disappearing. Until these 3 women start to pull things together, and they expose it's not actually mesmerism and black magic, or it's all very much like it draws from spiritualism that was happening at that time. They say it's actually just men that are the cause of all of our suffering. So anyways, it's very compelling, and it's really beautifully written. I really enjoyed it. And it's kind of spooky, like if you're looking for something that's very true crimey and historical fiction-y for the Halloween season, I really do think this would be a good pick. And then I just started reading, I don't have it here because I'm reading it virtually, digitally, but it's called Malort, and it's by Josh Noel. I don't know if anybody has ever tried Malort, but it is this super old liqueur that tastes absolutely terrible, apparently. I've never had it myself, but I've heard of it because I'm interested in like cocktail history and drink history. And so this book chronicles Malort. Apparently it's supposed to taste like a forest fire if a forest fire smelled like burning earwax or something like that. It's supposed to be super intense, really gross flavor, but it's endured for like over 100 years. It's one of those products that you would think like shouldn't exist anymore, but totally does, and people still use it, and some people really, really like it. So it's equally like hated and loved by similar people in like this kind of similar niche drink community. So it talks about this whole history of how it's still around, like how it came to be and why it endures. And I just find it like funny. And if anyone's interested in like drink history, it's like a great book. And then up next for me is The Brothers Grimm, a biography that's by Anne Schmeising. And I am so excited for this. It's supposed to be a like really, really well meticulously researched biography of those 2 guys. So I can't wait. That's coming out later in the month, and I'm so excited to get into it. I just feel like it's going to be really Halloween-y. And then really quick, because I only had the 1 book to show, I had this in my bag, so I thought I would bring it up as well. This doesn't come out until April. So this is like a super long preview.
Bookseller's prerogative to
Yes.
just have the advanced reader copy.
Get the special copy. This is called Friends of the Museum. It's by Heather McGowan. I just started it, and it's all about this small team of people that make a museum what it is, and kind of the very long story that unfolds when people who love history get together to try to interpret and preserve it. So I'm very excited about that one as well.
That's good. And Amber, what have you been reading?
I just finished All I Want Is You by Fallon Ballard. It is the story of 2 writers who used to date, and they were very serious about each other, and then they had a terrible breakup and didn't speak to each other for quite a while. And then they end up both they're told that they have a prize that they're going to win. So they go, or no, one of them has to present the prize to the other. So they go to this fancy hotel in the middle of nowhere where they're going to have this wonderful ceremony with all of these authors and publishers, and then they get snowed in.
Oh.
Then there's only one room and only one bed. And they have to coexist while snowed in this fancy inn with all of the coziness and all of the crackling fires and all of the Christmas cheer. And then they end up writing together while they're there. And
Sounds fun.
it's very, very fun. I loved it. It was so great. I read it in one sitting.
And would you say, is it a holiday read?
It is, yeah, it's
I
Christmas.
always want like one really just fun, easy, like romance at the holidays. Okay,
It is set at Christmas, and it is a great holiday read.
Excellent.
I am currently reading another holiday read,
Yes.
Make the Season Bright by Ashley Herring Blake, and I am very into wintry books and winter holiday books. So I don't stick to these just around this time of year in the winter, but this is a great time of year to recommend them. That one is fantastic as well.
Okay.
And I think up next, I'm going to read If I Stopped Haunting You by Colby Wilkins.
Oh, great.
Nice, spooky season one, set in a haunted Scottish castle.
Well, I have been listening to a lot of books recently because I've been traveling, and I listened to 300 Days of Sun by Deborah Lawrenson, which actually came out in 2016, and I picked it because it's set in Portugal, and I'm getting ready to, luckily, spend some time in Portugal, and I had no idea what I was getting into, but it was fascinating. It was a story within a story, and so you had a contemporary storyline where a young woman has gone to Portugal kind of to get out of a bad relationship, and she meets a young man in her language class who it turns out is really doing some investigation into his own history because he was adopted. She's a former journalist. But then it gets tied into a manuscript of a book that was written, that was published in the 50s, but that takes a look at World War II in Portugal and sort of kind of the tenuous peace between expats who came to Portugal and Nazis who were in Portugal. So there was a lot more intrigue than I thought there would be, and I really enjoyed it. It was a great listen. And right now I am getting my spooky on, so I'm listening to The Once and Future Witches by Alex E. Harrow because I missed that when it came out in 21. And you'll recall last year I read Starling House by her.
Yes.
So I'm in the middle of The Once and Future Witches, and I'm really, really loving that. And I'm also into research for my next novel, so here's a little hint what I'm investigating. So I'm reading about Vermont prohibition, teetotalers, bootleggers, and corruption. And I have a slight fascination with a sort of mostly uncelebrated heroine of prohibition who is named Queen Lil. So a really neat character who's from right on the Vermont-Canadian border and actually ran a house of ill repute during Prohibition that was called a line house, where there were these houses where half the house was in Vermont and half the house was in Canada. So when the police came, they just made sure all the booze was, on the Canadian side and everyone was fine. And I think there's going to be a role for her, a small role for her in my next novel, which I'm really excited about. I know, very fun. And then coming up, I know Jess loved this book, and she gave me this copy and got it signed for me, so thank you, Jess. So next on my list is, and make sure I say it right, The Lost Boy of Santa Chionia, because it's Italian.
Yes.
Chionia. The Lost Boy of Santa Chionia, which I can't wait, and you've told me so much about it, so just ready to snuggle up with this.
So good.
That's what we're reading. We hope that you all are also reading. And remember that we now have a SoVT Book Talk email, and we'll make sure that that's on the bottom of the screen. So if you want to let us know what you're reading, if you have questions about what we are reading, or if you know any other local Vermont authors you'd like to see on the show, please shoot us an email. Thanks again for joining us, Amber.
Thank you.
We are joined by Paige Vignola, who is the Assistant Director of the Manchester Community Library, and we're going to share some literary events that are happening around our area. And I get to go first for once because I am thrilled to announce that registration is open for the Southern Vermont Writers Conference, which will be coming to the Equinox Hotel March 30th through April 4th of 2025. And early bird registration is open through the end of November. And you can find this, it's being sponsored by the Green Mountain Academy for Lifelong Learning. So I will also have a link. You can go to southernvermontwritersconference.org, or you can go to the GMAL website and get all the information. But we're super excited. This will be 5 full days of intensive workshops, afternoon craft talks, evening salons. We're going to be having a special event with the booksellers at Northshire Bookstore.
Yes.
And we are bringing Megan Mayhew Bergman will be speaking at the Manchester Community Library. So we're just wrapping this all together, but we are super excited, and space is limited. So if you're interested or you know a writer who might be interested, please share this information with them. And now, Paige, why don't you tell us what's happening at the library?
Well, it's not all literary, but it is definitely interesting stuff going on. The library took a look around and realized that we needed to kind of up the amount of programming that we had for preschoolers and toddlers. So we now basically have something happening every day of the week. 10 to
great.
10 or 10:30. On Monday mornings, we've got music. Actually, we've got 2 BBA music students who are coming down and doing Monday music days with the preschoolers.
I love it.
I know, it's fantastic.
that's
Oh,
awesome.
it's wonderful. It's absolutely lovely watching them interact with the kids and the
Yeah.
parents. Tuesday, we have our usual story time. Thursday, we have a play group that we're in kind of a partnership at the moment with Northshire Day School. So it's a play group that runs out of the library, but it's kind of working on gross and fine motor skills in order to be able to do pre-literacy skills with kids. And then on Friday, we have a paint and play, which is just fabulous because you got a bunch of little toddlers who are running around doing all kinds of great crafts and activities, and it's lovely. And then in addition to that, we recognized that we needed to kind of step up our after school game because there are a lot of kids who have, maybe adults who are unable to be there right after school. So we're trying to make sure we've got stuff going on every day of the week. So on Mondays, we have, we call it a Tinker Lab, which is computers, small electronics. The kids are going to be learning how to do a little bit of programming, creating games. On Tuesdays, we have our usual robotics club, but we also are starting up a new group that's called Build Quest, which is not just Legos, but like what can you build stuff out of? So in the wintertime, we're planning on doing like building igloos and all that sort of stuff as well.
So cool.
Yeah, it is gonna be really
That's really
cool.
cool.
I'm really looking forward to that one.
Yeah.
Wednesdays, we have our usual Dragons in the Dungeon. I was going to call it Dungeons and Dragons, but we actually call it Dragons in the Dungeon, and which I suppose is not all that flattering for our downstairs area, but still, we'll decorate it for Halloween and make it into a dungeon, I guess. And then we have another coding club, and that's going to be learning how to use Scratch, learning how to use Python. So for elementary and middle school kids who want to kind of get a leg up, maybe if they're going to BBA and they can do computer science later on. And then we have our Creativity Cave, which we've been running for the past year. And of course, all throughout the month of October, we've got all kinds of spooky activities, spooky craft projects we're going to be doing. And then Thursday's Chess Club. We're going to add another thing to Thursday. So if somebody has suggestions as to what you'd like to see on a Thursday afternoon, I'm all ears for that.
Okay.
And nobody wants to do anything after school on a Friday, so we've just kind of left that one go. So that's our after preschool and then our after school. We're also, for adults, bringing back our French conversation group. So that's going to be from October 10th, Thursdays, October 10th to November 14th. And this time the 2 teachers are breaking it up into beginner and intermediate sessions. So those who are starting from scratch can come to the early class. And then those who are a little bit more proficient come to the later class. So it's 5:15 to 7 o'clock. October 12th, we are partnering with Southwest Vermont Council on Aging in order to be able to host a community health day where we'll have a whole bunch of different individuals and organizations from the area coming in and offering information and advice on various different aspects, be it nutrition or physicality. We're actually even going to have a massage therapist there. I mean, so it's going to be a really great experience and opportunity for people to learn more about how to maintain their health. And then this is the one I'm really excited for. On October 22nd, we've got a spirited look at Halloween folklore. And you
Yay.
can join author, mystery maven Roxy Zwicker for an enchanted evening exploring mysteries, traditions, and magic of the Halloween season.
I'm coming to this.
So, it's so very exciting. And Roxy is just phenomenal.
She's awesome.
Yeah, she really is. So she's going to talk about symbolic decorations, like, why, nuts, pumpkins, scarecrows, corn stalks. So look, why? Why is that a thing? And she says, the ghostly veil to the other world is at its thinnest this time of year, and the fields are bare, the leaves have fallen from the trees, and the skies are going gray, and a chilling energy creeps through the air. And it is my favorite season. I've already started decorating for Halloween, so I cannot wait to have Roxy at the library. And last but not least, October 26th is our big Halloween party. We love Halloween at the library, and we throw a big party every year. It's going to be from 5 o'clock to 7 o'clock on that Saturday. So when you come down from Halloween on the Hill, come on down into the library, and we'll do costume contests. We'll have dead delicious food. We'll have all kinds of old school party games, all of it. So
That sounds
Oh my
great.
gosh, yes.
Okay.
So
Add a
excited.
couple of those to my calendar.
Oh,
for
Yes,
sure.
me
Fantastic.
too.
All right, Jess, what's happening at Northshire?
All right. On Saturday, October 5th at 6 p.m., we're doing an event with Ethan Tapper. He has a book out called How to Love a Forest, and that's going to be presented with Vermont Woodlands Association. There are tickets that are required for that one, but a portion of each is going right to Vermont Woodlands. And he, this is his debut, but he writes in such a way that is just absolutely beautiful, like nature writing. It's very much like in the spirit of like Robin Wall Kimmerer stuff. Like it's so good, so good. So I'm very excited for that one. And then we have another really fun one coming up the next Saturday on October 12th. It's going to be from 3 to 4:30 p.m. We're doing a Croatian cheese tasting with an author, Kristen
that email.
Vukovic.
That is exciting.
Oh, so excited for this one. She has a book out. This is her debut novel. It's called The Cheesemaker's Daughter, because she is a cheesemaker's daughter from Croatia. And she's a very accomplished food and travel writer. So this is her first foray into fiction writing, and there will be cheese and much discussion. And then afterwards, we're inviting everyone to come back to Northshire. She's going to have like a whole display of different like cheesy books, things about Croatia, things about sheep and whatnot. And there will be some refreshments at the store as well. Tickets are required for that one as well. You can find us on our website, of course, to register for that. And then Friday, October 25th at 6, we are having Amber come to the store. So Amber Roberts will be joining us with Rachel Lacey. They're going to both talk about their books, Haunt Your Heart Out, and Rachel Lacey has a new book coming out called The View from the Top. So they're both romance writers, both writing books that take place right here in Vermont. So that's going to be a lot of fun as well. It's going to be spooky. So I'm very excited. And then Sunday, October 27th at 2, we're doing a Halloween story time. So I'm going to be sharing some spooky reads, and we're encouraging everyone to come in costume. I'm very excited for that one. And then to wrap up the month on October 29th from 4:30 to 6:30, we're going to have a typewriter type-in. So we're encouraging authors, people who are just interested in writing, interested in typewriters, come to Northshire. We're going to have typewriters out on the floor. Feel free to pop in, write a page or two, get to like experience these machines and kind of mix and mingle with each other.
There's something so satisfying about the click of a keyboard
Yeah.
on a
Yes.
typewriter.
And that's a Tuesday night when we have our writers group normally at the library, so maybe I can tag team and get some writers group to come over.
Yeah,
That'd
pop
be really
on
fun.
over and
Yeah.
take some pictures, enjoy. There's going to be a couple different types of typewriters. You can do a little typing on every one, kind of get a feel for it, listen to it. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. And then, of course, there's a couple more events. You can find them all online at northshire.com.
Great.
Yeah, that's the brunt of October for us.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Jess, and thank you, Paige, and thank you so much for being part of this first season
thank you
of
for
So
having us.
VT
Yeah.
Book Talk. We've had a great time. We can't wait for next season. And so until we see you again, happy reading.